Okay, let's see the head of the Gemara. The Gemara says that David Hamelech did David Hamelech did two affairs, and he sort of got away with it because the Rebbeinu Shalom was protecting him. The Gemara said, "Kama lo choli v'lo margish garver demori saye." Someone who the Rebbeinu Shalom is helping him, he'll be able to be saved. So Shaul was ba'achas. Shaul did one aver, also and it took him out. David b'shtayim. David did two averes v'lo also and it didn't take him out. So Shaul ba'achas mahi ma'asid Agag. Shaul did not kill Agag when he captured Amalek. In fact, Gemara Shaul did other affairs. There was the Maisa that Shaul had the Kohanim and Noid killed because he thought they were protecting David. Zok the Gemara, Amaisa the Agag sivni chamti ki amlachti es Shaul lamelech. It's only referring to the aver of Agag that the Rebbeinu Shalom took away the malchus from Shaul. The other avera was not the cause of Shaul's demise. David b'shtayim, what were David's two averas that he was not punished for? So the Gemara, it was two. It was the Uriah Uda Hasosa. It was the avera of Uriah that he sent him to his death, and there was the avera of Hasosa, which is at the end of David's malchus. He allowed Klal Yisrael to be counted, and we're learning the sugya that counting it could be fatal, and it led to a magefa. In fact, Gemara, the Ikonami Maisa, the Bas Sheva. What about the Maisa of Bas Sheva? That he had improper, or he had what we would call improper relations. But he was punished for that. So that's not the two that we're referring to. Dichsiv, there's a kivsa, Yishal Marbatayim.
He was punished for counting also. Counting
the Gemara is going to bring that up. The Gemara is going to bring that up.
No, so if that's a reason for something, okay. All right.
So what are the four punishments that David HaMelech got for the Aver Sheva? Yelad, the first child, died. Amnon, who was killed by Avshalom. Tamar, who was raped by Amnon, and Avshalom that rebelled against him. Correct Gemara, Hasam Namu Ifriminei. By the Magefa, exactly like what you're asking, is by the Kasasa, David HaMelech was punished as well. So you see that he was punished for the Asasa. So why are you saying, why is the Gemara claiming that David got away with it? So Gemara, Hasam Le Ifrumi Gufei. Sure, there was a Magefa, but David himself was not punished. People around him died. And we're talking about him being punished in his own group. But Hasam, if you're talking about Yelad, Amnon, Tamar, and Avshalom, those aren't his gulf being punished. Those are external tragedies. So no, in fact, they did punish him in his gulf itself for counting Klal Yisrael. David for 6 months. David HaMelech had Tzaras, Parshu Hemenu Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin separated from him. The Nistal came in the Shechina, and the Shechina was taken away from him. So that's referring to the Sanhedrin. Which is referring to the Shechina. In fact, the Gemara of Amar Rav, this is where we left off yesterday. Rav said that David HaMelech did another Avera. What was his Avera? Kibel David Lashon Hara. David is Makabel Lashon Hara. And the story goes that a fellow by the name of Tziva came and told David HaMelech Lashon Hara on Mephibosheth. And he told David HaMelech that Mephibosheth was intending to rebel against him. And what David HaMelech did is he granted to Tziva all of Mephibosheth's assets. And then when Mephibosheth came back and proved that he was innocent, David HaMelech let Tziva keep half of the assets. Zok to Gemara, Kishmuel, the Gemara here holds of Shmuel, the Amar like Yibul David Lashon Hara. The David was not Makabel, the Lashon Hara. In fact, Gemara, Rav Nami, the Amar Kibul David Lashon Hara, but according to Rav, even according to Rav, who holds that David was Makabel Lashon Hara, it's an Aver that he did not get away with. So it's not one of the two Averas that we listed that he did get away with. Because if Rumine, they did punish him. Amarti atav etziva tachalku es hasoda. When David HaMelech allowed Tziva to retain half of the field of Mephibosheth, Yotza Baskel for Amrloi, a Baskel came out and told David HaMelech, Rechavam v'Yeravam yechalku es malchus. Your malchus face David, your children are going to end up fighting over it and splitting up the malchus, which is an oynish that paid him back for being mekabel lashon hara on Mephibosheth, and therefore the only two cases that we find that there was no oynish at all was Hasasa and Uriah. Zok the Gemara weiter. Ben Shana Shaul b'Molchei. So let's look at the lashon pasuk. The Shaul definitely was not a year old when he became Melech. So let's see the Ayin. Samach Ayin. Ben Shana Shaul b'Molchei u'shtei Shana Melech Yisrael. So it's talking the first year that Shaul was a king, the first of the 2 years that he was the king. So we darshan it. Amar Rav Huna, Kiven Shana. Shaul HaMelech was like a 1 year old child. What does that mean? Shaloi tam chet. He never ever tasted chet. That's how holy Shaul was. You know, they say over a story of a person who had just gotten past the terrible stock meltdown of the 80s, and he was speaking to his friends, and his friend says, "I lost everything. I can't sleep at night. Can't sleep at night." So he responds, "You can't sleep at night? I sleep like a baby." He says, "What? How do you sleep at night? You don't have a problem sleeping? That you could just sleep like a baby?" He says, "No, I get up every hour and I cry." So here the Gemara says that Shaul HaMelech why was he like a baby? Because he's a man who didn't have any taste of chet. Maybe he cried like a baby. Maybe that's what the pasuk means, that he was like a baby, not clean from chet, but very dirty indeed. Which is a suggestion that Shaul HaMelech was a Baal Chet, which is a little bit of a slight to the cover of Shaul HaMelech. Because Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak suggested that, he was shown a siyuta in his dream, what Rashi says is Malache Pachad, Mafil Moisai. He had scary dreams, but scary malachim. He had nightmares. Zok the Gemara, Amar, he said, Nanesi lachem atzmoi Shaul ben Kish. It was answered for you. I'm answering Shaul ben Kish. In other words, clearly they're being toiveya from me that I slighted your covenant. And he wanted to. It was his way of asking Mechila. He was admitting defeat to Shaul HaMelech. Didn't help. He was still having bad dreams. So then he said, Melech Yisrael. Then when he addressed Shaul to ask Mechila, he mentioned as well that he was Melech Yisrael, and it doesn't tell us anymore about any bad dreams that he had, so I assume that he stopped having these bad dreams. Why is it that the malchus of Shaul did not last? Because Shaul was perfect. He didn't have any problem. Rashi says mishpacha. He came from a beautiful family with no issues, and therefore since they were of such perfect stock, such from fine stock, the Bereshit knew that his descendants would become two Balagaividik over Yisrael. Avol David Marissa Mavia. David HaMelech came from Marissa Mavia, so he had something, a pagam, so to speak, that today David HaMelech wouldn't stand a chance to do a shidduch based on his yichus, because we check into things so much. But since David HaMelech had that embarrassing or compromising yichus, he would never be a balgaiva. He would always be very humble. But Shaul HaMelech, his children might have not been so humble, and that's why Shaul HaMelech's malchus could not last. Zok to Gemara. I'm just trying to make a quick adjustment. Thank you. Zok to Gemara. You cannot appoint a leader to the tzibur unless he has a bag of shrotzim hanging on his back. So if he tries to become too big of a balgaiva, you can tell him, turn around, what do I see hanging on your back? Don't be such a big shot. Zok Rashi. So they say a couple of things. First of all, so there's a couple of different ha'aras I heard. One is if he had anything bad, you have to make sure that all that bad is in his past, not in his present. In other words, he has to be perfect, and although he has something that's in the past, it cannot be impacting him now. That's one. Second thing is he needs to have something about him, but it shouldn't be something that's public knowledge. It should be something that not too many people know, so that you can still extort him if necessary. Now that I didn't hear. That I added in. But it has to be someone who's a mavuzah. It doesn't pass for him to be a leader, but he has to have a pagam which will cut him down a couple of notches. He will not allow his pride to go unbridled. Why was Shaul menash that he lost his malchus? Because at a time where he was supposed to be strong, he was not. Like it says in the pasuk. Let's see it in the psukim itself, because it reads much nicer. Under Ois Pei, by Naval Yal Omru, and the bad people in Klal Yisrael said, "My Yisheni Zeh, who's this king? Am I a king? Who does he think he is?" Vayivzu, they're Mavazim, Vayuvil Lo Mincha, and Vahikamachrish, and he didn't protest. So people were openly making fun of him, defying him, and he didn't protest. And then it says, "Vayal Nochash Amoni, Vayichan Al Yovish Gilad, Vayomer Kol Anshe Yovish Al Nochash." So there was trouble there with Nachush. So why was there trouble? Because he didn't put down his foot. He wasn't strict. He wasn't exerting his force of cover that he should have had. What led him to do the Aveira of being Merachim on Agog, and through that he lost his malchus, it's because when he was supposed to be tough, he wasn't. Right away, when he became established as king, he was Michael's covered. And he showed that he's not worthy of being a king because he doesn't know how to exert his power when necessary. Yisrael said, who would have said that Shaul Yuma and you bit me up? Who does he think he is that he should be our king? So Tanuas Hanashim, and then they wanted to kill those people who were murdered against David, and he did not allow those people who slighted him to be punished. So
we just said that having too much gaiva was
sorry.
We just said having too much gaiva was a problem. So if he's been Michael on his cover, that shows he's not gaiva.
So I guess you have to really dance a fine line, because you cannot be too soft, but you can't be too tough either. So it is a fine line. Not everybody's ready to be a king. You got to be able to do that balance perfectly. Yeah.
What do you mean? He was a Mashiach Hashem.
Right.
He was chosen, but so who else should be Roy? If not a Mashiach Hashem.
I don't know if they're suggesting that it was a mistake that he became king. The reason why he was right to become king. The reason why he lost it is because he didn't deal with it properly. So I'm sure when he was Nimshach, he had the potential to be the right king, but people make mistakes.
Right. Okay. Yeah, but I have to agree with Duvi on this point. He can't win either way. He's not too gaivadik, but then he's he wants Shmeichel on his covered, so he can't win either way.
Yeah, it's just like a shidduch. Just like a shidduch. It can't be too loud, can't be too quiet, it can't be too this, it can't be too that. It's just right.
Mishal HaMelech would have been the perfect shidduch. In shidduchim, they would have loved him. He was tall, he was handsome, he was strong, he was wealthy, and he had perfect yichus. David HaMelech was a short little redhead guy who was the youngest, pushed away. He ended up marrying a girl who, I'm sorry, his grandfather married a girl who was of questionable yichus, and he was the one. Like I heard someone once describing in a very cute way. He was coming on to Shul, was talking about David Melech. Boaz's wedding invitation when he married Rus, it said, Bocher Achoshev Boaz, Akala Hamahulala Habasula, in Basgila, Akala Hamulala Basula, Rus Hamayavia, and then there's a little asterisk. She's not quite a Basula. According to certain shitas who hold, it's mutter. But there's a couple of asterisks under her name, like justifying the chasna. Any Talmud Chacham, she'enoi noikem v'noiter chenochash, who doesn't take nakama and doesn't perpetuate the hatred like a snake in his heart, Eva Kenoch Beliboy, any Talmud Chacham is not a Talmud Chacham. In fact, the Gemara, how could you say that? It's a mafur shalaya. V'oksiv lo'sikaim v'lo'sitar. Zok the Gemara, ahu b'maman hudichsev. Lo'sikim lo'sitar is b'maman, which we'll get into in a second. What does it mean, noikem v'noiter kinachash? So Rav Elchan quoted a couple of different similarities between the Nekima and the Netira that the Talmud Chacham is allowed to have and a Nachash. First thing is a Nachash does not hurt a person with any other limb that it has other than its bite and its mouth. When the Talmud Chacham has to be Noikim and Noiter, he should never lift a hand. He should never Chas Shalom raise a hand to anybody. He should speak out to be moicha against something that's done improperly, like a Nachash that only uses his mouth. The next thing is a Nachash does not have hana from the food that it eats with his mouth. It doesn't have hana. Everything tastes like earth. So to the Talmud Chacham, when he does Nekim and Netira, he shouldn't say, I got him back. It shouldn't be personal at all. He should be Nekim and Noiter because he has to be Makbar on Kovod HaTorah. But he's not allowed to do things for his personal benefit. And the third thing about a Nachash is, where does the Nachash usually bite? We usually find him, okay, he bites you on your ankle, which means he shouldn't be quick to take Nakama and do Natira. Rather, he should wait till the whole story is over and he could analyze it and watch it and consider it to be sure that this person actually needs to be spoken out against. And only after it's all over and he had a chance to really assess it and analyze it from all angles, only then is he supposed to be Noikim the Noiter. Zok the Gemara, there's two lavin, Lasikim and Lasitar. Zok the Gemara, who b'mammon do the That's talking about mammon. The chsiv, who b'mammon do the Tanya. Ezu Nekima ve'ezu Netira. What is Nekima? What is Netira? Zok the Gemara, Nekima, Amar loy hashilenu magalcha. If someone says, can I borrow your sickle? Can I borrow your DeWalt drill? Amar loy, lav, no, you can't borrow my drill. The next day, you go back to him and say, Amalai, who Shalini Kadumach? Could you do me a favor? Could you lend me your axe? Amalai, and you respond to him, I'm not lending you my axe. Kederach Shaloi Hishaltani, just same way yesterday you refused to lend me your sickle. Zuhu Nekima. That's the definition of Nekima. Ve'eza hinatira. What is natira? Amalei shleni kedumach. He said, "Could you lend me your axe?" Amalei loy. Lamacher amalei shleni chalukah. Could you let me borrow your beged? Amalei helech gezinta hide. I'm letting you use it. Any kamaischa. I'm not a jerk like you. Shaloi shaltali. You refuse to lend me. I'm a nice guy. I'm not like you. I'm going to lend it to you. Zuhi natira. That is natira. So Zok Gemara, the Isser of Losika and Velositar applies Binyoni Mominus. But if someone is Mavaza Talmud Chacham, their Avada, the Talmud Chacham, has to be Noikim V'Noikim. There's actually a Shaz Galocha is there is no Malchus for Nekima Unatira. Why is there no Malchus for Nekima Unatira? Because it's a Lav Shein by Maisa. You're not lending somebody something. Or you're telling him, I'm not like you. So since there's no Maisa, there's no Lav. So right now, the way the Gemara reads, which is going to change shortly, but right now the way the Gemara reads is someone who in Dini Mominus or in Mominus does Natira and Akima, he's over Lashikam Latita. However, in when it comes to other things, someone does something bad to you, and you're mavaza him back, or you attack him back, that would not be the law of Lasikim Lasitar at this point. In fact, the more of a tzar the gufa loy, are you claiming that there's no isser of Nakimu Natira when it comes to like a personal attack, a personal tzar? But Tanya we learned, Hanalovim ve'enin those people who take flack, they allow people to scream at them and embarrass them, and they don't embarrass back. Or shoymin cherpasim bein meshivin, they hear people being mavaza them, and they don't answer. Oishin me ahava, they do things be'ahava ushmeichin b'yisurim, and they're happy with yisurim. Aleim makosav omer, the ahava of those who like your Rebbeinu Shalom, kitzeis hashemesh b'gvurosai, they're going to be powerful like the sun. So you clearly see that you're not supposed to take the kama. You're not supposed to be noiter sinner. You're supposed to swallow and smile. So how could you argue that the Talmud Chacham should violate this pasuk of Ahava Kitzeis Hashemesh Bigvura? Right? Zok the Gemara la'olam tenaket levelidei. Zok Rashi. What does that mean? The Talmud Chacham should never attack back, even though someone bothered him. But what he should do is, he should never take Nekama. But if he sees that the Rebbeinu Shalom created circumstances where this person who slighted him is being punished, Yishtoik, he should keep his mouth shut. Meaning, he's about to not allowed to hit back, but he doesn't have to intervene in the event that this person is getting punished. And that's what the Gemara means when it says that a Talmud Chacham is supposed to be noikim v'noitik k'nachash, is he shouldn't say anything when this person is getting punished. In fact, the Gemara we learned even that's not appropriate. If someone's maver midoisav, he's moichel somebody, and therefore he should help if someone's in trouble. Mavir and loyal kol peshov. They're moichel there, so clearly that's a good thing. How could you suggest that a Talmud Chacham shouldn't do something like that? So the word all that means is if this person who ba'avalton asked mechila, then he should be mavra midoisav and he should be moichel. However, if the person doesn't ask mechila, then he could still hold it in his heart. As Rashi says, the kima mishpat, then yishtoik, the Talmud Chacham should not intervene. So it happens to be machlokes. The Chavetz Chaim learns that there is a lav. You're over the lav of Nekima and Netira, even in not dinamominus. Just like we saw in our Gemara, that the Gemara is saying that the mitzvah for a Talmud Chacham to be noiter is in very, very limited situations. Not that he's allowed to do anything. If a person is mevazeh and he never asks mechila, he's not allowed to chas v'sholom be noikim, but he's allowed to not intervene if this person is in trouble. Otherwise, it's allowed. Zok the Gemara weiter. When the Kohanim were engaged in the pious, they would put out either one or two fingers to be counted. However, the Mishnah tells us that a thumb may not be used, and if a thumb is used, it could confuse the person who's counting, and he might consider that thumb as coming from a different person because he's not focused on the faces, he's focused on the fingers, and that will ruin the Gemara. So tomorrow, Hashta Shtayim Motziyim. If the Mishnah says that you're allowed to put out two fingers together, Achas Miboy, you for sure could put out one finger. So why didn't the Mishnah just say Umametzin Shtayim? Why did it say Achas Oishtayim? Amar B'chista Loikasher Kan Bebari Kan B'chayla. A healthy person could put out one finger. Someone who has an issue with his joints and it's hard for him just to put out one finger. It's easier for him if he puts two fingers together because sometimes it's hard to keep your fingers apart. He's allowed. Evada doesn't mean a real chayla because a real chayla is not doing the avodah, but it means someone who's not able to keep his fingers apart. In fact, the more Tanya we learned, achas motzin, Vatanya b'nichus. I'm sorry, achas motzin. One finger you're allowed to put out. Shtayim emachin. You shouldn't even put out two fingers, even fingers that are side by side. A bari, someone who's healthy who could easily hold out one finger, he's the one who has to put out only one finger. But a chayla who finds it difficult to put out one finger by itself can even put out two fingers because if they're together, the memuna will not confuse and count it as two. By yechidim moitzim shtayim, and yechidim, which is referring to sick people who are not well, Rashi says, even though they put out two fingers, of course they're only counted as one finger. Are you saying that it's only counted as one? I'm going to show you a brisa that when they put out two fingers, they actually counted as two fingers. Because Vatanya we learned, Ein moitziin loy shlish v'loy goydel mipnei haramoyim. You're not allowed to put out the third finger or the thumb because of cheaters who are going to try to make themselves win the raffle. But if he puts out the third finger, it does get counted. So you see that the extra finger does get counted. If you put out your thumb, then then you don't count that at all. Not only don't you count that person and sort of throw them out of the raffle, the mamuna has a whip and he gives him a zetz for trying to cheat. So the oynish for getting caught cheating isn't just that we caught you and you can't cheat, you also get a zetz. Zokt Gemara. So it's shver because here it says that you do count the shlish, and the brayta earlier said they moinel and ella achas to only count as one. So tomorrow ma moinel nami achas. When we say that the shlish is counted, it doesn't mean it's counted as an extra person. It means the person who put out the shlish will be counted, but the person who put out his thumb gets completely disqualified. My pekia. What is this pekia that we're saying the coin will get patched with? Zokta Gemara, Amrav Medra. It's a Medra. My Medra. What's a Medra? Amrav Papa Mitarka the Tai the Pasuk ratio. It's a whip of the I think it's the shepherds whose end is split. It's a Arabic type of straps. Asuya shoit l'susum that I made, I guess, is a whip for the horses. The psikreshe. It has its end is sort of cut into fringes, which I guess hurts more. It's not thick at the end like other whips. It's cut into fringes. So the horse, when being whipped with this, will feel it more. That's the kind of whip that this person who tried to cheat the election will get whipped with. Ufkia, Lashon Pesach was talking, it's a Lashon of split, like the Mishnah says, that from the worn out clothing of the kohen, they would make wicks, which were like fringes. Lashon kriya means they would tear it. So that's what this whip was like. Amar Abaya, Reish Havamina. I used to always think, Haditnan then the poi mamuna ala pekia. That's how we learned that Ben Biboi was mamuna ala pekia. I thought that meant Amina Psilta. I thought it means he was in charge of making the wicks for the menorah. Kiditnan mi baloi michnas kehanim from the worn out pants, and they're worn out garters. Mehen hoyu mafkiin, they would make mafkiin out of them. They would tear them into wicks. Uvehen hoyu madlikin, and they would use it to light the menorah. But given the Shemana lahad Tanya, now that I heard the following brisa, amina my pekiya nagda. Maybe what it means, maybe it means that they would make whips out of the worn out clothing. Because I see pekiya means a whip, not just torn strips. There were once two people running up the kevish, and in their zeal to win this race, to be able to do the Tumas Hadashin, one pushed the other, and there was an injury. So the Gemara says there was not only an injury, in fact, there was a fatality. Not a stama fatality, by accident. There was a first-degree planned murder that occurred over the Vaidah. Taner Rabban, Ma'ashid b'shnei kohanim, so yushneim shavim. They were two equal kohanim that were running up, and they were running v'rotzen v'ayil l'kevish. They were running up the kevish. Kadam echad me'em l'toich arba amish shel chaverei. One of them got within 4 amos of his friend. Not al sakin. He took a knife, which means it was premeditated, because what in the world was this fellow that was running up to Kevish doing with a knife? The Takaloi Beliboi, he in cold blood murdered his opponent. Omar Rab Tzadok wanted to talk about the tragedy and show the tragedy so people should realize where have we fallen. Omar Rab Tzadok al Maila Sa'ulam. He stood up on the mile of the tower. Rashi tells us that wasn't the ulam, the hechel, it was somewhere on Har Bayis. And he said, Achenu Beis Yisrael, my dear brethren, Shimu, listen to this. Harei Omer, it says in the Torah, Ki matzei chalo ba'adama v'yatu zekenecha v'shirtecha. When even one person dies, who is responsible? The Zekenim and the Shoftim. The Zekenim and the Shoftim, no one has a havamina that they're guilty of the murder themselves, yet they have to take responsibility. So therefore, Anu, us here, Almi Lahavi Egla Rufa. Who has to bring the Egla Rufa for this terrible tragedy? Who has to take responsibility for this terrible tragedy? Al Ha'ir or Al Hazaris. And that created such a hisaris. People felt so bad about what occurred. Go kol ambabchia. Everyone started crying. You know, there's a famous vart. They ask, who's a shlemiel? Who's a shlemazel? So the shlemiel is the fellow who spilled the soup. The shlemazel is the guy who the soup was spilled upon. The nudnik is the guy who comes and says, well, what type of soup was it? That's the nudnik. So what happened? Ba'aviv Sheltinik, the father of this murder victim, came. Umatzah kishum afarfer. He sees his child struggling for his last gasp for air. Imagine what a father feels at that moment. You know what he said? Amar, he's going to die. His death should be a kapara for you. But Rabbi Shai, he's still alive. The knife that's in his chest is not tame. We can still salvage the knife, that it shouldn't be tame. The knife is not tame. Forget my son. He's going to die. He'll be a kapara. But the knife, to teach you something terrible. He was more concerned about the tahira of the knife than he was about the life of his child. It says in the pasuk, "The gam dam noki shavach Menashe harbe ma'od." We learned earlier that Menashe he killed so many people, ad asher milei yishalayim pelapeh, and we learned that he had such a bad influence. What Menashe did, that murder became nothing, and people killed regularly. It was a normal occurrence, and nobody nobody raised an eye, similar to what's happening in some of the anti-police states. Zok to Gemara. Hi Maisa Kadim. Which story occurred first? There's two stories here that will definitely generate a reaction to change the way the Shuvas Hadeshin was awarded. So which Maisa occurred first? Ilema the Shvichas Damim. If the murder occurred first, Hashta Shvichas Damim like Tekinu Paisa, and Nishbar Rag like Tekinu. If a murder didn't cause them to change their methods, so an injury would cause it. El the Nishbar Rag like Kadim. It must have occurred. The injury must have occurred first. The Kivin the Tekinu Paisa. So if they were misakin a pais after the injury, how did this murder occur at all? The shvichas damim occurred first. They thought, okay, this isn't a typical, this is a very unusual thing. We're not going to change our policies over that. Since they saw that even as by accident there's danger here, the kinu rabban paisa, that made them change their methods. Amad Rab Tzadok al Malas Ulam Vamar Achenu Bnei Yisrael, Achenu Beis Yisrael, Shimu, Harei Oimek Yiz Moter Chalol Badama, Anan, As, Amila Havi, Ala Ir Ala Zaris. Fact Gemara, what type of question is that? Yushalayim, Bas Asuya Egla Rufi. Can you ever bring an Egla Rufi to Yushalayim? Latanya Asar Dvarim Number Yerushalayim, Vizu Achas Man. One of the halachas that we know about Yerushalayim is Einai Mevia Egla Rufa. Yerushalayim never brings an Egla Rufa. So what was Rav Tzadok trying to suggest?
Not only that, that's only if you don't know who the murderer is.
Oh, the oid loy nadamiko. Here they know. Ella he was just trying to be the people and crying. Why did Yerushalayim not bring that Rufa? It's Nageto Shaidu we had earlier. Was Yerushalayim distributed to the Shvatim or not? Was it considered communal property or was it private property? So on the side that's communal property, there was no halacha of Egla Rufa. So Baal Shotinik, the father of the child who was murdered, comes and says, Umatzoi Shimafarpa. Amar Hareu Kaparaschem Vadain B'nikayim. The Lamdacha teaches you Shakash Aleim Paris Kalim Yoshim Mishvichazam. It bothered them more to hire of the Kalim than the death. Ibailu. What was the reason? What changed in their attitude? Was it Shvichas Dam who dissolved of Altaris Kalim for the Kaima? Are you going to suggest that their regard, their concern for Tyrus Caleb remained unchanged? But what happened was people became desensitized to murder, and that's why he was more concerned about the knife than about his child? Maybe people still were very concerned about murder, and they were not desensitized. About Tyrus Caleb, he did Chamira, but they were uber careful with Tyrus Caleb. Either way, it's a sort of a warped sense of priorities. Tashma, the Kanas of La Talmuda. About the Gemara says, the Gam Dam Naki Shabach Menashe. So you see, the Gemara is trying to illustrate that there was a lackadaisical attitude, a desensitized attitude towards murder. Who dissolved the Taras Kalim. Nothing changed of their concern for Tumah, but they really became desensitized to murder. Tanarabam, Upashat Valavish Begadam Acherim. The Kohen who's going to do Hoitzah Sadeshin. So in addition to Truma Sadeshin, which he took a little bit of Deshin and put it beside the Mizbeach, from time to time, when the Tapuach, the pile of ash, got too big on the Mizbeach, they would take a whole bunch of ash outside of the Machane. So it says in the Pasuk, Ufashat V'lovish Begadim Acherim V'oitzah Sadeshin. Torah describes changing your clothing before you do Hoitzah Sadeshin. Shemeni Kederech Yom Kippurim. So when it says Ufashat V'lovish, where do I draw similarity to the Kohen Gadol who was changing back and forth from the big day Lavan to the big day Zav on Yom Kippur? Shepashit big day Kodesh for like this big day Chayil. That's what I would think is happening here. Talmud Loimar upashit es begadov v'lovash begadim acherim. It says you have to put on begadim acherim. Makish begadim shaloivesh the begadim shepashit. We're comparing the begadim that he removes to the begadim that he puts on. Mal'alon big day Kodesh. Just like the begadim that he was wearing before Hitzah Sadeshin are big day Kodesh. Afghan big day Kodesh, he also needs to wear big day Kahuna in order to take out the Deshin. And we're not going to say like on Yom Kippur that he could put on his own personal clothing and he takes off the big day kodesh to do the Haitzah Sedeshin. In fact, the Gemara in Kain Mata Medleimer Acherim. So why does it begodim Acherim? If they're big day kodesh that he's wearing before Haitzah Sedeshin, and he's wearing big day kodesh for Haitzah Sedeshin, what does the Torah mean when it says he should wear different clothing? But you don't wear your finest brand new big day kahuna to take out Sedeshin, which can get dirty. Rather, you wear an older pair of clothing. We darshan that right after the word acherim it says v'haitzi sedeshin, and it's not talking about kelim, it's not talking about the godim at all. The message that the Torah is teaching us is limit al kohanim balei mumin sheksherin lahaitzi sedeshin. This teaches you that even a kohen bal mum is allowed to do a sedeshin, but avada he does not wear the big tekuna. Omamar acherim pchusumen. You wear other big kahuna that are not as nice as the regular big kahuna that he would wear. The Tanya Bishmol, the begodim shabishel and ktela rabbi, the begodim that you wear in the kitchen, which are a little dirty, lo yimzuk ben koisler rabbi. When the waiter comes out of the kitchen, there he has to be dressed impeccably to serve his guests. And that's why you have to wear big kahuna for a Sedeshin, but not the same impeccable big kahuna that you wear when you're doing other things. We have a machlokes by Tzos Sedeshin if they need to wear big kahuna, if it has to be a kohen, or it could even be a balmum. Zokter shlokish, even harama Sedeshin has the same halachas. You might not have to wear your big kahuna, and maybe even a kohen balmum could do it. If you're machlokes by Tzos, the whole machlokes that we have here is only by Tzos Sedeshin. Avo b'harama by Truma Sedeshin, divrei akoil avoidehi. Everybody else is avoid, and he has to wear proper big kahuna. My time is Rish Lakish. Why does Rish Lakish say that Harama is just like a tzah? It's not an avodah. Amalachi will tell you, if you hold the Truma Sedeshin as a regular avodah, yesh lach avodah sheksheir b'shnei kelim. Is there any avodah that could be done with only two of the four big day kahuna? Because there's a v'lovash hakoyin midei vad u'michnas vad yilbosh habasarei the Sedeshin. So he's only wearing the pants and the shirt, but he's not wearing the hat and the gartel. If he was a real avodah, he would surely have to wear all four begodim. Rabbi Yochanan says the pasuk doesn't mean to say he's not wearing all four begodim. He's wearing all four begodim. The Torah says he's got to put on this clothing, but of course it means all his clothing. So therefore it's an avodah, and you have to wear big kahuna. Hani. So why did it list off b'dafka these two clothing if you have to wear all four? Midei vad, we learned from there at special limud. Midoi kimidosai, that it has to fit him. It can't be too short, it can't be too long. And michnas evad, and from the michnas evad that the list off is l'chedetani to teach us, minayin shloi davar kodim l'michnasayin. How do you know that the first beggar he's supposed to put on are the michnasayin, the pants? Shenemar u'michnas evad yilbosh al basarai. He has to put him right on his basar, meaning that's the first thing he puts on. Very shlokish. How does he know that the big tekuna have to fit perfectly? Midei kimidosai, how do you know that? The after Echmona, the Lashon Mada, he could have said his ksainis. But the Torah used the word Mada, which is an unusual Lashon. From that, you see that it has to be his size. And where does he know that from? It didn't have to say Al Basari because of the Lavash. Why did the Torah stick in the extra Al Basari to teach you that the Mechlasayim have to be put on first? So there's actually a shaila. What if the Kohen did not put it on first? He put on his avnei first, and then his michnasayim. So what does he have to do? Does he have to take everything off and start over, or could he just take off? He could just take off a shirt. Now he's left only with his michnasayim, and now he can start again. So there's such a shot that he has to take it off again.
So it's like a two-step process. First they learn, because both from the Omen said that we learn from one beggar that one beggar has to fit in.
Right.
And then we learn from that one beggar that all of the beggars have to fit.
Correct.
Right? Because we only learned it on either the Messiah
That's
or
right.
the Avnei.
That's right.
The hat
But I think the only thing that was really necessary to be fitted was the shirt, because the Mechasayim had a drawstring. The hat is one size fits all. The garter is one size fits all.
they have to keep.
I'm not sure,
It's a flexible hat.
but the Gemara tells you that the avnei, the way it's done is it has to be long enough that it touches the floor before he puts on the gartel. And after he puts on the gartel, it comes up a little bit. So there was a very specific size I'm not sure if that's applicable to all the begadim or just to the shirt. I'm not sure about that. Yeah. Listen, I have a bathrobe. I sued the manufacturer. It said one size fits all, and I tiny that it's one size fits most. So we have a machlokes tanoim as to whether or not it's an avodah. It says al basari, ma tamad loimer yilbash. If it says al basari, why have to say yilbash? It says v'lovash hakoyin michnas evad and min evad yilbash. It already says v'lovash. Lahavi misneves va'avnei laharama div Rabbi Yehuda. That teaches you that not only do you have to wear the two begadim that are explicitly listed in the Torah, but you also have to wear the other two begadim, meaning you have to wear the full big day clothing. Abdoi Shomer, l'Rabbi's big day kohen gadol, Yom Kippurim, sheksherim l'kohen hedjit. From Yilbash, you see something that has nothing to do with Trumas Hadeshin. It's extra, and you apply it to a completely different thing. That the big day lovin that a kohen gadol wears on Yom Kippur, those are kosher to be used for a kohen hedjit on any other day. There's two reasons why I would disagree with Rabbi Doisa. Number one, we learned that the kohen hedjit all year long wore shatnez, and this gartel was not shatnez. The gartel that the kohen gadol wore Yom Kippur. And another reason why it wouldn't be appropriate for the big day lavan of the kohen gadol to be used for a regular kohen hedjit on a regular Monday is begadim shenishtamshus ben kedusha chamura tishtamish ben kedusha kala. So therefore, Yilbash cannot teach you that the big day kohen gadol and Yom Kippur are good for a kohen hedjit. Ella matam Yilbash. What does the Torah mean with the extra word Yilbash? I'm sorry, l'Rabbis as a shkokim to say that you're even allowed to wear slightly worn begadim that doesn't pass through the begadim. I guess we should stop here because we're getting close to Shabbos. So shkoyach Rabbi Yosy, have a wonderful, wonderful hatzlucha day.